अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of NL Hafta. It is actually the 498th episode, two short of 500s.
Yes.
So we have in the panel today, before I get to the headlines, Manisha Pande.
Hello.
Raman Kirpal.
Hello.
Anand Vardhan. How's your exam? Is it over, the law exam? Very good. Flying colors?
Result तो नहीं आया.
First class first, gold medalist, we can say like that. Like A.K. Hangal used to introduce every son of his in every black and white film. First class first, gold medalist from university. So I'm the A.K. Hangal of Newslaundry. And we will have joining us in this episode Sucheta Dalal. Most of you I'm sure know who she is, but those of you who may not, she is an award-winning business journalist, probably the most authoritative business journalist on covering the stock market. She famously had broken the 1992 scam of Harshad Mehta. That entire series, Scam 92, is based on her book, actually. On that note, two announcements. The Dalip story, which was on the News Minute website, is also on the Newslaundry website.
This is a story about one fateful night in Kochi. Criminals on hire, a megalomaniac actor accused of orchestrating a crime, and a female actor who decided to fight. This is a case that shook an industry and divided society.
There's an 11-chapter story by Nidhi Suresh. It is very long. It is a mini book, but I would highly recommend it. It gives you an extremely disturbing, factual telling of what happened then and how the law has proceeded since. I highly recommend you read it. It's a paywall story. It has taken more than 6 months of research, and we'd like to do at least 4 or 5 such reports a year. But this takes very long, and if you read it, you'll know what I mean, why it takes so long. So do subscribe, and you can share that link with others and encourage others to subscribe and pay for journalism, because then we can do journalism at a pace which is accurate, honest, and also in public interest. And also we have a Sena project up. A very senior journalist, Srinivasan Jain, many of you know him because he was on NDTV for the longest time. He also did a mini-series for us during the Lok Sabha election. He and two of our colleagues will be accompanying him to Israel and whatever parts of Palestine they can get into.
It will soon be a year since Hamas's October 7th attack, triggering the Israel-Gaza war, the worst the region has witnessed in decades. Yet, the Indian mainstream media has scarcely reported on this story. I will travel to ground zero to bring you the reality of the war and to cut through the conflicting narratives surrounding it. But we can't do this without your support. Support this Newslaundry News Minute project by contributing to Gaza 1 year later.
We think this is important because we haven't seen any on-ground, longish, good reporting from an Indian journalist. Whatever we're getting is from Western journalists. And initially, whatever happened, you know what it was like on broadcast. We don't want this to be funded by any Adani, Ambani, or government ads. It should be funded by you. So I do hope you will share it with your friends, relatives, and others and contribute so we can top up this fund and get a lot such journalists who actually are in the market right now and give them projects that are worthy of their experience. So please do contribute. The link is in the show notes below. You can also use the QR code that you're seeing on the screen right now. It'll stay for a while. So use this QR code and do contribute to that project. And as promised, Sucheta Dalal has joined us from Bombay. Thank you for joining us, Sucheta. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So, before the rest of the panel, who I'm sure will also have some questions or maybe some inputs to give, for the clarity of many of our listeners, because I have seen Hindenburg described as a predatory businessman who like to discredit companies because they are not able to run their companies, as was said by one prominent anchor and other such conspiracy theories. As a business journalist of probably the most credible in the country, could you just explain to our audience what exactly is Hindenburg Research?
So Hindenburg Research does forensic analysis of companies, their accounts, and claims that it's a short seller. Now, every market has bull operators and bear operators, right? Now, you become a bear only when you see an opportunity to sell a stock because it's overpriced.
Right.
And you do research, and traditionally it is easy to be a bull because you think something is going to go up, your upside, there's not that much of risk. You can make a 10% profit, or you can make 100% profit, or it doesn't move at all.
And there's an alignment of interest from governments to business when everybody wants it to go up.
Generally. But the bigger issue is that if you take a short bet and you say something is going to go down from 100 to 50 and it goes up to 200, you lose your shirt. Okay. So short sellers, contrary to the kind of bad mouthing that you hear, have to be extra careful, have to do extra work. And a lot of times, as happens in India, in fact, when I started in journalism in the 80s, it used to be quite funny. We used to cover Reliance, and I'm naming a name. And every time there was a terrible story about Reliance, and the entire market would say, "Aaj to stock girega." The stock would shoot up. And it would go up for 3 or 4 days because
Madhabi Puri Buch, who is the head of SEBI, has been accused in this report, or implicated, depending on how credible you find it, of having a conflict interest because she or related parties, namely a husband, had interest in a fund that has some common interest between Adani companies. Now, in your view, Sucheta, far from a perfect world, has the Indian, market regulator and the general environment around the market been so credible that in another circumstance this would have led to a resignation, or we've never been in that zone?
In this day and age, unless there is consistent pressure, people are not going to resign. Now, the point is that it is the government that gives this support to the person to say, "Kuch nahi, brazen it out." But does it damage the institution that she's heading? According to me, it does. Because there are serious questions that are raised. I mean, I don't know what this ridiculous stuff about witch hunt is, because then the persons who say witch hunt should show us how many others have faced this kind of stuff. I'm saying all the time that we are not expecting any higher standards from the SEBI chairperson. In fact, we ought to expect higher standards. I'm saying let's judge her entirely by the...
And don't you see a concerted effort on the part of the government to defend, Buch? Because they see, I mean, if you see the television, all legal luminaries or important people like Minister of Law, he has spoken on this issue. Then Harish Salve has spoken on this issue.
Ravi Prasad Shankar bought in Jolt Soros.
YouTubers are raising this issue. I mean, don't you see a concerted, a very organized effort?
Also, I was just wondering, the mutual funds body, which is the AMFI, the Association of Mutual Funds in India, which is not really connected, they put out a very lengthy defense of her, and it was not so much a defense of her as much as a trashing of Hindenburg. I'm just wondering, what is the Association of Mutual Funds? Why are they going into this? I mean, shouldn't they just chill and wait to see how this unfolds?
Absolutely. And, frankly, I don't understand. Maybe these people don't get good advice, but governments make mistakes, okay? And it's not that it hasn't happened before. I was telling someone yesterday, even in 92, Dr. Manmohan Singh was new to politics. And when the scam broke out, he was like, "Listen, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about markets. RBI will look at it." The SEBI chairman, G.V. Ramakrishna, and he's told this to us, I think it's also part of his memoirs, he said,
the current controversy was preceded, I think, 2-3 months ago. There was also report of Mahesh Jethmalani, who is a lawyer and belongs to the BJP. He highlighted that the research report had also a conflict of interest. Some Chinese interest was involved. Some Chinese interest was involved, and it was related to the loss of project. Means China lost some project in Haifa port in Israel. So and some conflict of interest was suggested that how this report was. So many supporters of this line that we are discussing now link it to that. That is a reactive thing, that you established one conflict of interest and we are establishing another conflict of interest. So that is also a pattern. Second, what has been the approach of the judiciary? So,
before I come to Manisha and then throw it back to Sucheta, just one distinction I'd like to make of what is conflict of interest. The interests of Hindenburg Research are aligned that this stock goes down, they'll make money. So you can say that's a conflict of interest, but that's not a conflict of interest. They're doing this because it's accurate. What they're saying is true. Similarly, what this research says about her is true. There's a conflict of interest because she is judging someone where she has drawn pecuniary benefit and still her related party, husband, is a primary, member of the governance of that fund. So that is just the fact that, let's say, I have funded, a report on how shitty the media is, corruption in media. Of course, it's in Newslaundry's interest that report finds light of day because Newslaundry stands to benefit. But is it untrue? So conflict of interest as a phrase, I think only in spirit means conflict of interest if what you are doing and what you're expected to do should be opposite things.
Also with Hindenburg, look, they're not claiming to be any investigative news organization. They're short sellers and they have enough disclaimers in their report. Going to the extent to also say that this is our assessment. You don't base your market positions based on our assessment. So there's full disclosure on part of Hindenburg, which is not in the case with SEBI chief. But I want to ask Sucheta one thing, that there is the issue of course, investments in this opaque, mysterious, multi-layered offshore entity. But the other aspect of the report, that she had 99% stake in a consulting firm. Aren't the regulations very clear when it comes to this aspect, that in this scenario, even your husband should not be, should not have stake in a company that's consulting companies, which you are tasked with regulating?
So precisely, if part one was bizarre enough, part two is even more ridiculous, which is her private consulting company. She says they're dormant. One company, the Singapore one, is transferred to her husband, she says. The Indian one is 99% owned by her. She says in point 10 of their statement that these companies are dormant. Point 12, I think 11 and 12. Point 12 says...
Now, what's happened in Bengal, I think the Lallan Top's interview is hair-raising. I think, I have no idea what Mamata Banerjee was doing or is doing, but the ghastliness of this rape has led to protests across the country, including, I think, Delhi also, some medical colleges, there were protests.
No,
There's
all
one in
over.
Safdarjung today also.
Nationwide.
But Manisha, the coverage of this, and of course, one doesn't want to discuss too many details on this. I've seen many very gory details being discussed. I just want your opinions, only woman on the panel right now. You've seen the kind of details that have come up. It is an extremely violent and horrific rape and murder. To what extent and what all details do you think should be discussed in media and what is too much?
Yeah, that's always a point of conversation. I mean, in India, according to one NCRB report, you have about 86 cases of rape on average a day. And the reason why out of those 86 cases, one makes it to the front page headline is always defined by the brutality of the crime. That is one of the reasons why the December 16th case became so big, because apart from the fact that she was, just somebody you could associate with, somebody in a city who'd want to watch a movie, she was with a man, she took a bus, things that we can just ordinarily associate with. Apart from that, the details of the crime, I remember, in fact, I was in DNA when that had happened. When we read the FIR, it was so gruesome. And there were these doctors who said that we've never seen a case like this in our life before. That is what made sure that it was front page headlines for the longest time. So sometimes journalistically, journalists also want to stress on the brutality of it, give the gory details of what has happened to jolt people or to make a rape newsworthy in a country where it is just so common. See, a case like this is also a tipping point for issues that I think otherwise don't get prominent coverage. Like you were saying, the doctors wanted to talk about there.
Right.
So in this case, I think a lot of the doctors who've come out are also raising just basic issues that, look, we have 36 hours of shift. And women have to have night shifts. We can't say, no, we won't come. If you have a patient, you have a patient. So all of this has coalesced into doctors raising the issues of the fact that they don't really feel safe in a government hospital. There's not enough security. Sometimes they have to deal with drunken men late at night, because hospitals are also like public hospitals you have a volume of people there, which is way more than private. And you don't have that kind of security that maybe private hospitals have. So a lot of doctors who are protesting are also raising these basic day-to-day issues that they are facing on the back of something as horrific as this. And the fact that this happened at her workplace, I think that is really
that issue,
scary.
Doctors have been raising it, in different parts.
Different forums, yeah.
Now you have CISF, Central Industrial Security Force, defending so many, even Parliament. Now they are defending Parliament. They are posted at Parliament. So I think maybe CISF can provide security to all these. But they are also, I know that.
What gathers momentum has an element of randomness. So means you cannot point out at a set of factors that, this was responsible for it. I think besides the political motivations, two things. One is it's a metropolitan space. And second is that doctors as a professional group are already an interest group. So their motivation to amplify the story on through media and other platforms. So and the media platforms aligning with them to project it in a way that they want to. So once you have a nationwide mobilization of medical professionals and associations working in their regional outposts and feeding to media, it will take a certain mass.
But the one thing that I do want to point out, you spoke about Hathras case, and I think one of the most distasteful things is competitive violence or competitive whose injustice was more. So I just want to make clear that is not the comparison I'm making. The specific I'm talking about is media coverage. So of course there's a huge randomness to what gets that momentum, but in today's day and age, I don't think it's random at all. There are calls that can be taken for market forces, for urban versus rural. Like he said, rural rapes will go unreported, whereas because the audience is there.
Something closer to Delhi.
Yeah, something closer to Delhi. But most importantly, the political fallout, to me today, is the most important aspect of what gets play. If you recall, in the Hathras case, bas, muft mein itna ich milega. For the full uncut podcast, subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free. The best way to listen to the Hafta and indeed all our podcasts is through the Newslaundry app. You can download the app by clicking on the links given in the show notes. So do download our app and get the best podcast experience. And also pay for news and support a new news media ecosystem that Newslaundry is trying to encourage, where we are accountable to you because we run on contributions that you make. We don't take government ads, we don't take corporations ads, so that news serves the public, because when the public pays, the public is served. Subscribe to Newslaundry, click on the link in the show notes below and proudly say, I pay to keep news free.